Welcome to this wet fish-filled odyssey. We are diving the Breeder Wreck, Ardnamurchan Bay, near Oban, Scotland, with Loch Allen boat charters. Before we start the dive, a little about the history of the wreck. Before it was a wreck, the SS Breeder, a steel ship, was launched from Schiedam, Netherlands, for the Royal Netherlands Steamship Company. The name comes from a provincial town close by to where it was built. The ship measured 122 metres long by 18 metres wide and about 10.6 metres high. 6,941 tons. She was powered by twin DR steam turbines, quite modern for its day, made by Vickers Electric Company, delivering 3,300 ship horsepower. By any stretch of the imagination, a really good looking ship. After the invasion of the Netherlands in May 1940, the Breeder fled to Britain, where she was placed under the control of P&O and armed with a single 4.7-inch 120mm gun. On the 12th of December 1940, she left London with a crew of 42 on board, bound for Mombasa, Bombay and Karachi. So she steamed north for the convoy assembly point in the Linn of Law. En route, on the 14th, she was joined by a number of other merchantmen in a convoy assembled in Southend. On board, she had a valuable cargo, including 3 Hawker biplanes, 30 de Havilland Tiger Moths, military vehicles, cement, a huge range of other general cargo, and 10 horses, thought to belong to the Aga Khan. The Breeder reached Oban 8 days later and anchored to await the departure of the convoy. To avoid the U-boats lying in wait in the Eastern Atlantic, she planned to sail west almost across the ocean, turning south and going down the Americas and then back across to Cape of Good Hope. On the 23rd of December 1940, at dusk, a group of Heinkel HE-111 bombers flying from Stavanger, Norway, swept across the anchorage and straddled the Breeder with 4 250kg bombs. The force of the explosion ruptured the water inlet pipes and the engine room was rapidly flooded, depriving the ship of power. She was quickly taken under tow and beached in shallow water in Ardnamurchan Bay. The next day, only a small part of the cargo had been offloaded before a storm swept in and swept her off into deeper water. She sank at 56.28 north and 5.25 west, her bowing around 18 metres and her stern 20 metres. This ship has since become one of the most popular dive wrecks in Scotland, if not the whole of the UK. Our route around the Breeder, we decided from the outset not to go to the bottom. Shallower, we could see all of the wreck, and it would give us at least an hour's breathing air and dive time, with our maximum depth being 20 metres or so. We descended the White Line, went around from near the starboard bow to the bow, around the bow, and followed the Yellow Line, and off to the stern and back along the starboard side, making our ascent as shown in the Red Line, with safety stops and a change to decompression gas at 6 metres. Benefits of knowing the wreck, I know exactly where we are, just on the starboard side before the bow. So I signal to Les, let's head around the bow and up towards the front of the wreck. I first dived this wreck some 40 years ago, when she was much more intact than she is today. Many of her original features, bridge, stern cabin and cranes, were intact. It is inevitable that the wreck degrades over time, providing a changing habitat for all the life that you will see. When you descend, there is always a green glow in the water from the top 5 meters of water, which is mixed seawater and fresh water together from Loch Etive, a short distance away from the wreck. After 5 meters, it becomes saltier and much bluer. Today, the bow is as iconic as it's ever been. 86 years of life, soft corals, dead men's fingers, pulmotor anemones and sea squirts, all living on plankton and other creatures in the twice daily passing tide. It's very hard to explain why, but the bow feels like a very lonely place. Over the 86 years of Breeders sinking, there has been many thousands of divers swam over and inside the wreck, but it still feels very lonely, very quietening, but very beautiful. 1960s and 70s, SS Breeder was heavily salvaged by Davy Tye of Urban Divers fame, who sadly was injured and had a bend whilst removing the prop and suffered life-changing spinal injuries, making him wheelchair bound. He was such a great guy and full of life and always happy to help divers, as he did with me several times. As you're witnessing, the wreck is covered in life, taking advantage of the habitat on offer. I suspect many of these have been here since my last visit, 40 years ago or so. Colour everywhere. And looking up, you can see a massive shoal of pollock. They always seem to be here too. We are now about 3/4 of the way along the wreck on the starboard side. Here, a ventilation cowl you can see in the photos of the ship. There were originally two pointing backwards either side of the funnel, ventilating the engine room. Below me now, the engine room. The roof has collapsed somewhat. This would have been heavily salvaged for its valuable non-ferrous metals. And as I turn, you can see the funnel now collapsed. The side of the breeder extending down into the black abyss. A boat crane. I remember this from 40 years ago. There was once two. In photos of the ship, you can see the ship's lifeboat hanging from it. Then, as in now, it was always covered in lots of anemones. The rear hold a gaping black abyss, down to what remains of any cargo. from our group looking for things of interest. Their lights give them away very easily. What remains of the deck crane's tubes? These were used for loading and unloading the cargo. A view you're unlikely to ever see for yourself. On the Breeder, an incident some 40 years ago has guided my entry into wrecks and enclosed spaces underwater. From the entry point, I need to be able to see a clear exit and a clear route out, otherwise I don't enter. For me, scuba diving is about seeing life. Inside a wreck generally, there is no life. It's not about risking my own life to see it. Later, I will recount a story that formed this principle as I passed the specific location on the SS Breeder wreck. me now the large bollards which were used in those days for tying ropes on to keep the ship stable and alongside the jetty. Two more divers from our group enjoying the wreck. Absolutely everything you see on this ship is fragile. 86 years of being underwater has taken its toll. She is covered in a fine black mud that obscures underwater visibility in a split second. You must take care constantly, especially not kicking up the mud, for you and your buddy's own comfort and safety. I hope you agree though, it's still a beautiful place. Very different now than 40 years ago. The deck in front of me has collapsed and the sea is taking its toll day by day. Here we are looking over the stern, another iconic view of this old wreck. There used to be massive buoys chained to the bow and the stern. The stern one was very close to my current position, the place where I descended 40 years ago to photograph some sea pens I'd seen the day before, just inside a cabin. just below in the black is the position where the prop would have been, salvaged and sold by Davy Tye for a reported £2,500, a tidy sum in the 1960s. Below you see a massive deck winch used to haul ropes and cables and move all those goods around on the cranes. Here you can see the colour and diversity of life on the sides of the wreck. Sea pens, anemones, sea squirts, they're all thriving on the changing tides. Earlier I mentioned an incident 40 years ago. The day prior I dived the SS Breeder and through a porthole in the wall. At this position I'd seen a group of large sea pens swaying in the tide. I resolved to go inside the room on the next dive and photograph them with my basic film camera, an Iconus 4A. This was the early days of large single cylinders. Mine was a 15 litre with no backup air supply or decompression gas, as I have today. A rudimentary dive computer, an Aladdin, a dry suit. It was, after all, 40 years ago with my dive buddy Irvin Lake. I nearly died in a moment of total stupidity on my part. Before the dive, we had little or no discussion of my plan to photograph the sea pens in a room on the stern with the entry point on the roof. This was a large square hole. There was no other entry into the room at all. I signalled Irvin my intention to enter the room. This was right at the start of the dive, feet away from where we came down the anchor line. I thought naively that Irvin had understood to wait outside and I'd pop in, do the photograph, a few seconds, without any issues, and I'd be back out and we'd carry on our dive. How wrong could I be? Irvin followed me in, he blundered into the bottom. That thick black sludge filled the whole room in a split second. When I mean sludge, I mean zero visibility and zero light in that second. Unknown to me, Irvin had left by the same entry point in that split second. Me, I'm lost inside the room, 4 to 5 meters square, with no means of an exit and safety. What the hell do I do? Time stood still, my mind was racing, my breathing rate climbed, my air supply limited. Was this my fate? I made my way slowly up to the roof. I knew the exit was there. Even with a powerful torch inches away from my face and the roof simultaneously, I couldn't see the roof. I could, however, feel the ribs of the roof. I resolved a plan in my mind to follow the ribs to the side of the room, then feel my way using the ribs up and down, and hopefully found the entry point. This I did, at one point finding a porthole, seeing the green glow. Not thinking, I put my head through. I looked at the ship and the light and resolved to be calm and reduce my breathing. I had little idea how long I'd been there, what was the contents of my diving cylinder, and looked up, and at last there was the green glow. I left to safety looking around, and there was Irvin waiting for me next to a large crack in the roof, watching my bubbles coming out of the room. Some quick checks, I had a quarter of the cylinder left and my computer was about to enter decompression mode. It's time to go, and off we went. Once back in the boat, Irvin recounted his thoughts. How the hell was he going to tell my wife and children? Later, in the pub, we shared a beer together. This is the first time I've dived the wreck of the SS Breeder since, and I have never shared this story before. Now you know where my principle of no exit point with the route out before I enter a wreck comes from, and I hope it serves you as a good rule too. You may remember earlier I mentioned a cargo of bags of cement. Here they are, still stacked up, waiting to be offloaded somewhere else in the world. Not the most exciting cargo you'll ever see in your life. To my right is the starboard side of the ship, so we're heading towards the front again and to the point where we came down the anchor line. It's time to go when we release our decompression marker buoy so the boat knows where we are. Transfer over onto our decompression gas mix and both just relax and enjoy the wait until we're on the surface. Back on the surface and ready to be picked up by the boat. What a dive we've just had. It was fantastic. With thanks to Loch Allen Boat Charters, my buddy Les Roos, the dive organiser Paul Fiander, music by Dan Hennig and Lish Graves. I'm Tony Howells, filmmaker. This was a Wetfish Film Odyssey. I hope you've enjoyed watching this film as much as I did making it. I hope you want to protect our home as much as I do. Thank you for watching.